Honorable Minister, thank you so much for making time to speak with us on this day.
Thank you very much for inviting me to your show.
I'd like for us to begin off with understanding what the impact of climate change has been on the tourism sector in our country.
Well, thank you very much for that very timely question. I think our starting point should be the effect of climate change globally. It's something that has been discussed for a very long period of time. Obviously, back home, it used to be a myth before where everybody else was talking about climate change, especially our scientists. But obviously, over the years, then we've actually come to see the effects of climate change. Some of the seasons which we predominantly knew were going to happen or were pretty much preset in terms of our lives started to change. I'll give you a very interesting example. When we were growing up, we always knew that Independence Day, it would rain. Wherever you are in the country, it would rain on Independence Day. But suddenly today, fast forward, you're talking about rains only coming in November, in December, to a large extent. But to speak to your question now, what effect does climate change have on tourism? I think it's had a big effect on tourism. And for Zambia, as an example, Zambia is what we'd like to call a nature-based tourism destination. When you say nature-based, we're talking about wildlife, we're talking about forests. Those are the two critical issues that have been affected with climate change. Now, in terms of issues to do with wildlife, that includes also livestock. We have seen a number of our farmers who are in ranching, who are struggling rather because of the effects of climate change, in the sense that most of the watering holes, the dams, are slowly drying up. We are talking about wildlife. My national parks in Zambia, we have close to 20 national parks. All those have actually struggled with regards to the water facilities that exist within the parks. If you're talking about forests, those forests actually create shade for the livestock, they create shade for wildlife, they create food for wildlife. Those are some of the challenges that we're faced with, where we're seeing a number of our animals in the national parks actually dying out of exhaustion, out of dehydration, because of looking for food as well as looking for water. So it has had a direct effect on tourism, if I should put this way.
If we speak about preparedness, would you say we were prepared as a country for this adverse effect that climate change has befallen us?
Well, prepared, I would say yes, we were prepared. The severity, understanding the severity of the problem, I don't think we knew how severe this particular climate change effect will have on our country. Classic example is the last farming season that we've had, the 2023-2024 farming season. There was a call by His Excellency the President to get a number of us to actually plant our strategic food, which is obviously maize. We took heed to the call. We went out there, we plowed, we planted, the seed germinated, and alas, it was all lost. So we were prepared. We knew what was going on, but now in terms of the severity, we didn't understand that this thing was going to happen in this particular manner. The El Nino, the drought, which was occasioned by the El Nino here in Zambia, in sub-Saharan Africa, is something that most of us do not understand. And that's the reason why most of the African countries, obviously I'm talking about SADC, we declared this drought as a national emergency and disaster. And that in itself exactly tells you, with regards to the severity of the problem, that we're not very sure of.
Well, what's currently trending on social media now are rocky pictures of the Victoria Falls. And obviously that is one of the, our asset in terms of, tourism destination in our country. Has this affected the number of tourists, both local and foreign, tourists that are visiting the Livingstone and the Victoria Falls?
I was actually very delighted when I saw those pictures trending on pretty much all socials, WhatsApp groups. And I've always told my team, and I'll say it again in the public domain, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So whatever was trending essentially just gave an idea of what Zambia is all about, what facilities exist in Zambia, and those people who are actually forwarding. I mean, when you go on your WhatsApp, you see forwarded many times. That in itself gives me joy, to put it in that extent, because now people get to understand that there's the other shade of the Victoria Falls. I took it upon myself, together with my team in the ministry, to say, look, let's just show the world the three shades of the Victoria Falls. See it, feel it, and do it. That's exactly how the Victoria Falls is, the Musiotunya. If you remember very well, many years ago, when we used to market Zambia as Zambia, the real Africa, half the time we tell the tourists to say, the best time to come to Zambia to see the mighty Musiotunya Victoria Falls will be between March, April, May, and June. That's when the full spray will be there. You'll be baptized. Everybody was excited. And predominantly, we'd sell Zambia in that particular space.
Yep.
Why? Because we knew that after that particular period, the water levels in the Zambezi would recede. Now, because of the drought, the water levels in the Zambezi are receding at a faster rate, or rather, they are not being recharged at a higher rate, at the expected rate, because we don't have the rains. So it's always important to understand that if you go back in history, we used to sell the falls in this particular period. Now that we're here as a UPND and me sitting in this office, I'm telling people to say we're going to sell the Victoria Falls 365 days of the year, 7 days a week. Why? Because there's different activities that you can be faced there. Answer your question again, are we losing tourists? Yeah. I don't think we are. Because already, it's only now that we're now changing our marketing strategy to sell that particular asset, that joint asset between Zambia and Zimbabwe, to be sold 365 days of the year, as opposed to what you have. So even if you look at the stats today, you'll notice that you've got a spike in this period that I talked about. But the seeing it, the three shades I'm talking about is when you go to the falls, especially this period, it's a do-it activity. This is when rafting is actually on its high peak. Because the water levels are lower, it's less risky, quote unquote, less risky, but I can tell you it's a very safe activity to do. Now, with the moment after December, we close off rafting. And this is a highly regulated activity because we actually understand the water levels as well as the push. So come December this year, we cut down on rafting. We actually stop the activity because the water levels start to rise. Similarly, we have our perfect example of an activity which can only be done in Livingstone, nowhere else in the world. The Livingstone Island, popularly known as the Devil's Pool. Similarly, that activity can only be done during this period. When the water levels are high, I could guarantee you nobody would want to go in there because almost immediately, once you get into the pool, you'll be swept onto the falls. We don't want to do that. So these are the activities that are there. Then there's now we're going into a period where you see it. Now this is where the entire curtain, the 1.7 kilometer stretch of the falls is actually covered by water. Perfect for pictures, perfect for filming, perfect for everything. Even when you do your microlight, you'll enjoy it. That's the second shade. The third shade is feel it. I can guarantee you, April, May, June, July, you will not even be able to take your picture. The moment you walk into the rainforest, you're actually drenched. So that's exactly how the experience is. So for people to talk about it drying up, this is not the first time that has happened. I could tell you for the sins of my past, in 2018 or thereabout, Sky News had a cutting headline, "The Victoria Falls is no more." We were like, okay, fine, not a problem. Let's wait and see it. And surprise, surprise, it rolled back in its leaps and bounds. And we had the biggest curtain ever.
So, Minister, are you telling us that the drying up of the Victoria Falls has had no impact in terms of the number of tourists that are visiting the falls?
I don't think it has. I don't think it has. What we've actually done, the impact of it being seen as drying up has given us an opportunity to create more activities for the tourists for the next coming year. This is only happening this year.
Responding.
And people are responding. I mean, at the time...
Well, to be honest with you, I've had conversations of people from within Lusaka, who say we can't go to Livingstone now because the Victoria Falls is dry. There's literally nothing that is happening there because of these effects of climate change. And so I'm thinking, what about those that would potentially love to come see the falls, as the water levels, have increased? Absolutely.
And I'll tell you one thing. It's all about testing the pudding. And activities they vary from person to person. There are those people who would actually want to just see the full effect of the falls. Maybe it's good for background for their Instagram pictures. There are other ones who are adventurous, such as myself. I went to the bottom of the falls itself. I went swimming down there. I went fishing down there. Now, an average Zambian, unfortunately, might not want to do, not as much of a risk taker as some of us are. I mean, we do it.
Well, also, obviously, because of the fact that a large number of people that go there don't go to swim, they go to see the falls.
Absolutely. So, essentially what should be there is, there's a certain segment of the market which can actually enjoy to see that. And I can tell you, if if you have an opportunity, assuming that you're not a Livingstone resident or you're not a Zambian, you don't reside in Zambia, you will not be able to have an opportunity to see it in those 3 phases that I just talked about. But if you are, quote unquote, an international tourist, and you can only plan to say, I'm only going to move at this particular time of the year, then the activity might not fit you if you want to see the falls. Remember, tourists move because of various reasons.
Yes.
Some of them, they move because they're just on a vacation. Others move because it becomes too cold from where they are, and then they want to come to a destination which is warmer as opposed to what is obtaining at their country of origin, and then they'll be able to see those things. So it varies on what you want to do in terms of activities. But I think the only thing that I could possibly just speak to with regards to the people you are talking to, the Zambians, the people in Lusaka, is they have not seen that side of the falls. It hasn't been exposed to them. And that's the reason why I, a minister in charge of tourism, had to go there to actually show them that me being a Zambian, you can actually do these activities. So going forward, we will market these activities to the Zambians so that irrespective of you having the full curtain of the falls, you are able to do other activities unrelated to the waterfall.
I'd like to find out, Honorable Minister, how serious your government is, in addressing issues relating to climate change. I ask like this, Honorable Minister, because at the time when we as a country have declared, the President declared, the El Nino as a disaster in February of this year, and obviously expectations, by the people, is that even allocation to issues relating to climate, change would drastically improve. But we are seeing that there's insignificant improvement in terms of addressing issues to do with, climate change. Obviously, when you're coming into government, you painted a picture to the Zambian people, Minister, that this administration cares around issues of climate change, and that's the reason for why you did form up the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. Yet, we haven't seen, significant impact in terms of the allocations that go to, this ministry, but also particularly, issues around climate change.
Okay, very quickly. Is government serious about issues to do with climate change? Extremely serious. And you just answered part of your question. And that's the reason why the government, through His Excellency the President, Mr. Agane Chilema, deliberately set out the Minister of Green Economy and Environment to specifically walk the talk, to specifically address the call to action as regards to what are we going to do in terms of climate mitigation, which obviously we do understand. And today is no longer a hoax. It's something that has been scientifically proven, and the world is actually responding to it. Now, how serious are we about it? First of all, like you rightly answered, we set up the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. You suggesting that there's insignificant amount going to the budget? I don't think so.
Under 2%?
If you actually do a deep dive to understand exactly how that ministry operates, Zambia today, a third of the country, a third of 752,000 square kilometers is a protected area. I hope you knew that. A protected area in terms of 1, forests, 2, wildlife, 3, water, 4, land. Now, all these are what speaks to climate change, mitigation. All this is where now you understand that this particular area that we're talking about is actually a protected area. How serious is government? Just last year, Zambia was the chair of the Africa group of negotiators at the COP. That's how serious we are. We're talking about debt for nature swaps. We're talking about green bonds. That's how serious we are. Now, those in itself are actually going to, it's a self-sustaining ministry. When I say self-sustaining, is because they have the asset. The money is going to come from the asset that they hold, as opposed to us putting in money there. So the misnomer that people get to have is that you need to pump in money for that. No. A third of it is a protected area. Today, I could gladly tell you that we've been getting a lot of, just last week, my ministry, through BCP, got in excess of 10 million. Is it 10 million? And I'll just cross-check the figures. Based on conservation efforts, we're talking about carbon trading. This is something that is we're working on. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is a self-sustaining ministry. It holds onto an asset of which everybody else would want to have a share in it. So, because of that, and how we work with the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment is because I sit on this protected area, PAs, we like to call them in our ministry. This is where now we allow people to come in and say, okay, fine, what is it that we could possibly do to help you work around conservation. The whole idea for us is to ensure that forests are safeguarded, ensure that the biodiversity, our wildlife is actually kept in check, to ensure that we don't have conflict between humans and wildlife. Our role is purely based on protecting the environment that will pay for itself. The Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, the Ministry of Tourism are self-sustaining ministries. And the only reason why you probably see that the Ministry of Tourism has probably got an injection or an increase in terms of budget allocation is very simple. It's conservation. Conservation itself for us purely looks at law enforcement.
Yeah.
The biggest threat that we have for this 1/3 of the country, which is a protected area, is that of illegal charcoal burners and the poachers. It requires a lot of money. The large national parks that we have across the country would require a lot of foot on the ground to ensure that the poachers are actually rid of. All these people who are cutting trees, insensate cutting of trees across the country is actually worked on. That is where the money comes in. So you will be happy to note that that particular Ministry of Green Economy and Environment is going to be what we like to call a game changer. Even when we've gotten to a point where now we've restructured our debt, based on what our repayment is, any bank, any facility can come to say, look, can we offset this debt for nature? And that is exactly how we're running as government. And that is how serious we are with regards to climate change.
I love the fact that you're speaking about issues around, poachers and what you're doing as a ministry and generally as government. It seems animal-human conflicts, are on the rise with reports, of elephants attacking residents and tourists, as well. I don't know, what is being done to, to address this, but also another conversation to this is how are these people that have been attacked compensated? Is there compensation, for these people that have been attacked by these animals? Okay.
Again, you see, what we need to understand is because of our deliberate move to ensuring that we have low levels of poaching across the country and low levels of encroachment across the game management areas as well as national parks, it has shown that the population, the habitat has actually started to increase. Now, this is notwithstanding the fact that even the human population has actually grown over the years. The last census that we had, we're sitting at about 18 million or thereabout, if I'm not mistaken. Now we're sitting at about a population of 20 million. Again, this has put a stress on the environment. It has put stress on the land that we have. So people start to encroach. People are looking for better virgin land to start opening up fields for cultivation. Now, that in itself has actually put a serious strain on my law enforcement agencies within the Department of National Parks, which is the wildlife police officers, to manage these people who are in these particular areas. The biggest single challenge that we've had is that our own people find themselves opening up fields in a game management area. A game management area, Andrew, is a protected area. There's designated areas within the GMA that will allow you to actually do development. Development could be in anything. Could be you setting up a lodge, you having probably fields or anything. There's what we call ecologically sensitive areas, which ordinarily become what we call in the ministry dispersal area for animals. They come out of the park, then they go to a particular area in search of food, sometimes in search of water. So it all depends. But this is where now we find our own people in those areas. And once that happens, you'd find that they're in conflict with the animals. Now, what is it that we're doing? Sensitization is number one. We're discouraging a number of people to stay away from these ecologically sensitive areas, especially the national parks. The rules, the laws behind finding yourself in the national park illegally are very harsh. I will tell you that for a fact, and I want the members of the public to know that. The moment we are found in a national park or doing illegal things in a park without authority, minimum is 5 years imprisonment. Let alone find yourself with a carcass or you're found poaching or with firearm within those areas, minimum is 5 years. So I'd like to discourage people. It's not in our nature to be arresting people and imprisoning our own citizens. We want people to live freely.
Honourable Minister, these people are not apportioning land to themselves. These people actually, some of these people are your political party cadres that have been given land, for example, in the Lusaka National Park, where the authorities just destroyed some of the property there.
I'm not sure about people who are given allocated land. If my department,
what's happening in the Lusaka National Park?
If my department went in, if the ministry, not even my department, if the ministry went to demolish, if we gave a demolition order to properties which were illegally built, we did not allocate anybody. And that's the reason why I'm telling you, there's a third of the population, the third of the landmass of Zambia. It's a protected area. And again, I'm happy that you brought up the issue of Lusaka Park. Please, members of the public, desist. Don't have this insatiable appetite of occupying land that does not belong to you. The local authorities have been warned, and that's the reason why you have our colleagues from the Kafue District Council being removed from being an agency of the Ministry of Lands because of the illegal allocation of land. And we're going for other councils which are doing the similar activity where they are now dishing out pieces of land, parcels of land to unsuspecting residents of our community, purporting that these are legal pieces of land. That is not correct. Verify them with the Ministry of Lands, verify them with the Ministry of Tourism. We'll be able to tell you to say, this one, please stay away. There is no way this ministry would allocate plots within the general management, within the national park, or indeed the GMA. We cannot do that. So, human-wildlife conflict happens in such a way that these people allocate themselves parcels of land. If you go to Mumbwa West is a disaster, Andrew. Total disaster. We've told these people to say, do not do it. When my officers go in, it's court after court. But this time around, again, I'm telling the members of the public, when we come through to you, we will notify you well in time to move. We're having the same issue in Rofunsa. We're having the same issue in part in
You
Chipata.
notify them to move and not just arrest them?
No, we're a listening government.
But
we give you.
If someone apportions to themselves land in a catchment area in a national park, you're coming to dialogue with them and tell them to move out when you're supposed to be arrested for the illegality that they've
But
they've
that's
done.
what, look, I understand one thing. We just want to understand exactly where they're coming from. They're our own people. They are Zambians for starters. We need to verify where they're coming from. It becomes easier. But remember also, this is what is happening even in the mines. If you go to Mumbai, the same issue. When you move into that particular place, you actually find that the people, half of the people who are in there are not even the Zambians, they're foreigners. So we need to do a due diligence. We need to check, is Andrew Zambian? Yes. Okay, Andrew, where are you from? Andrew Mansa, chief, whoever. We'll take you back to your chief and tell them, say, can you please allocate land for your subjects in this particular area? If you do not identify yourself with any chiefdom, that's why we have the resettlement division within the vice president's office, which is able to now to get a group of people and allocate them in a different place. It's the same issue that I'm having in Kalulushi, Chembe Bait Sanctuary. Some individuals just decided to occupy a sanctuary. And all we just said was, look, this is a protected area, please move out of it.
I want to understand something, Minister. Then who is viable to be arrested? If you're going to say that these people that are building property, in this, protected area, government to go, to them, dialogue and find out whether they're Zambians or non-Zambians. If they're Zambians, then, take them back to where they belong. And if they're non-Zambians, make a plan for them. Then which people are you arresting? Those
So this is what happens. I'll just give you a whole scenario.
Yeah.
Once we identify that Andrew is occupying a piece of land, a parcel of land...
In the national park.
In the national park.
Yes.
National park is, in fact, national park is a no-no. In a national park, I won't even dialogue with you. In a national park, I will not dialogue with you. I will move you.
Will you take me to the police?
No, in fact, I will open a docket. You go to NPA, you'll be in court, and you'll be sentenced. Okay. Fast track, that I will tell you. Fast track. In the GMA...
What's the GMA?
The general, it's a game management area. It's a dispersal area for animals. As I mentioned, there's what we call a development area where you can be, where you can build. And there's what is called an ecologically sensitive area. You can't do anything in there because it's ecologically sensitive, because we've ascertained scientifically that animals would move from the park and come to this particular area and then go back. Within the GMA, then we've got what we'd call our hunting block. Again, that is where now we allow people to hunt. I'll give you an example. Like in Lower Lupande, the park is here. The GMA is here.
Yeah.
If an impala is in the GMA, I can shoot it. But if I find this impala on the other side, in the park, if I shoot that impala, you're going to jail. And that's how it works. It's very simple, and it's very clear in the law. Very, very clear in the law. So we have individuals who find themselves in the national park, mischievous, Lusaka Park.
Yeah.
There's no GMA there. That is a park.
Are you aware
And
that
that's
those
the
are
reason
UPND
why.
cadres? You're aware that those were UPND cadres?
I'm not sure about the UPND cadres. All I know is that we have Zambians who presented a complaint to my office purporting that they were allocated that land under the Kafue District Council. And I explained to them, I said, look, based on the facts that we have in the ministry and the survey diagrams from the Minister of Lands, Commissioner of Lands, this is a national park. So you are not supposed to be in here. So the recourse to you, Andrew, who actually paid X amount of money, is to go back to Kafue Council to get your refund and any other damages that you might want to get.
And so there's no stern action that was taken against these people?
Stern action against which people?
These people from the Lusaka National Park.
Well, I suppose the stern action is the demolition.
And it ends there.
Well, if they want to take us to court, I mean, they've got the right to go to court.
Minister, the last time we were here, we spoke about the Zambia's domestic tourism development strategy. Obviously, this was before the drought. I'd like to find out how this is moving now that we are amidst, this drought.
Well, I think we had started with a domestic strategy. That was a call to action based on what we went through COVID. And I'll say it again, we appreciate what the Zambians did during the COVID period, because the domestic tourists, the locals themselves, the Zambians, did keep a pulse on the business. In the absence of the Zambians heeding to the core and actually going out there to visit some of our tourist sites, the business would have shut down. That I would tell you. And we're very happy. And that's the reason why we deliberately went in to say, can we set up the domestic strategy? That would be purely strategic and intentional for the local market. And we did it. Unfortunately, the first launch, obviously, within the domestic strategy, my colleagues from the Zambia Tourism Agency launched a campaign called Take a Holiday, I'm Local. Don't know, take a holiday, take it local. So it ran, but obviously didn't get a lot of traction. Internal stuff that we needed to do was not done. And then post-COVID, and then now within the drought period, we did a relaunch. This time around, we're calling it Take a Holiday, Yamu Local. Oh, yes, now localizing it. And we launched it out in the Copperbelt at the Garden Court during the World Tourism Day. Now, the interesting thing about this one now is that we have engaged private sector to say, look, we have been getting a lot of calls from the Zambians themselves, the local tourists, suggesting that tourism in Zambia is expensive. And that's why we want to demystify that myth. Tourism in Zambia is not expensive. The only thing that you need to do is to plan for it well in advance. Number two, you need to cut a budget that suits you. We all know. I mean, we've got various categories. Andrew, I mean, if you get paid $10,000, 10,000 kwacha, why would you want to stay in the Royal Livingston? Why would you want to stay in Intercontinental? You might as well just want to enjoy yourself in a budget hotel, go to Livingston Lodge, one of the lodges which is owned by Minister of Tourism. It's got good linen, it's got a good bed, it's got good breakfast. What are you going to Livingston for? To go and see the Victoria Rocks? Yes, that's what you want. You want to go and see the wildlife? That's what you want. You want to go to Limpos? You want to go to Beehive, Fairmount? That's what you want. So it has to be within your particular budget. Yep. But what is so cool about this particular relaunch of Take a Holiday, Yamuloko, is that private sector has actually come on board. And if you take time to look at the Ministry of Tourism webpage, if social media campaigns, ZTA actually shows you the number of operators that have come on board, welcoming the Zambians to say, come and stay with us at a huge discount. And that's exactly what we're talking about. We missed it last time, but this time around, we've got it right. Once bitten, twice shy. And I can guarantee you that this particular campaign has gotten a lot of traction. A lot of Zambians are appreciating it. And we're just hoping that a lot of us Zambians are going to take a holiday Yamuloko this Christmas.
What are you going to do different that failed to do, during the first launch?
Well, I think first of all was active participation from private sector. At the time, we didn't get the active participation, but this time around, I can safely tell you that we're overwhelmed. That's number one. Number two is publicity. That's another thing. And that's why we're happy to work with yourselves, media houses such as yourselves, and many others, print as well as electronic, to send the word out there. We're also working with influencers. I'm sure you probably may have noticed we used a lot of influencers to tell people to take the holiday. And also, taking a holiday, look, when you go out, what I like to call the ultimate holiday is not about where you sleep. The ultimate holiday is activities you do. So even when you go out there, we want to encourage Zambians to invest in activities that people want to do. Are you the one who runs a restaurant? Do you run a bar? Do you run a water park? Do you run activities, boats, horse riding, all those activities? This is what government would not ordinarily do. We want private sector to run those activities. And that's what people want to do. If I'm going to go to the Copper Belt today, I'll stay at Garden Court, discounted. Yeah, and then what? What else? I need to see something. Take me to the chimpanzee orphanage. Take me to Mindolo Dam. Take me to whichever it is. Is there a golf course? Take me to go and play at Nkana Golf Club, Changa, whichever it is. So those are some of the activities that we would like to encourage the private sector to be on hand to help government to facilitate those activities. Now remember also, that's the reason why when we sit as government, we want to support private sector to push the agenda. As private sector pushes the agenda, the only thing that I expect out of you is, one, to pay the right taxes. Number two, to employ the number of Zambians, boys and girls who are looking for opportunity. And that's the more reason why within my ministry, under the Zambia Institute of Tourism and Hospitality Studies, we want to encourage parents to take their children into hospitality. Hospitality for a very long time has been caught in court, by the way.
Yep.
But this time around, with the help of the support from the ministry, His Excellency the President, we've created a career pathway within the Zambian curricula, where now children will actually be taught to say, look, you can actually train to be a hotelier from get-go. And how does that happen? Those of us a couple of years ago, we're not young, we're not that old either, we were able to do home economics. We just thought home economics was just for girls in the schools. But obviously, some of us used to go there to just see what's going on.
Yep.
I won't say what. But ultimately, what is important is to make sure that this particular child who says they're going to be doing, they're going to get into hospitality, they would have known much, much earlier in the years to say, this is what I'm going to do. So, to answer your question and to be more pragmatic, what we want to see is, over and above having a pillow to rest your head on, you need to see activities. And ordinarily, you should also understand that today's Zambian tourist, is no longer the one that just used to go like husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend. Today, they're more family orientated.
Yep.
So you'd actually find that they move with their children. And because they move with their children, I mean, the children want to have activities. They will not just be spending hours in the room. They want to be out there. And those are the activities which I would like to encourage the locals to set up.
Speaking about activities and the president, I think the president has been up and about, visiting different parts of the country, predominantly where there's a traditional ceremony. You see the president get to grace that particular ceremony. Is it something deliberate that you are doing as a new Dawn to promote some of these traditional ceremonies?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you one thing. I think the first stint was in 2022. We got into office 2021, August. And in 2022, we attempted to actually go around the number of traditional ceremonies. 2023, His Excellency the President held back. I continued with that. But this time around, we've actually seen that on two folds. These traditional ceremonies give us an opportunity to actually let the world know, to say, this is how we are united in diversity as a country. That's number one. Number two, it's a non-secret. This country was polarized before UPND getting into power. Polarized, non-secret. Now, because of that, we're saying, look, how best can we be seen to be out there to ensure that this particular country is reunited? And this is exactly what we're talking about. For the first time, Andrew, for the first time ever, most of these traditional ceremonies that my president, your president, His Excellency, Mr. Agane Chilema, in most cases, this is the first sitting president who actually graces a traditional ceremony. you can imagine what the locals would feel or how they feel. Just on Saturday at the Gutamwezebwe in Chief Nyawa's chiefdom, first time ever, the people in Nyawa chiefdom were very excited and were very delighted to go there. Same applies in Nakonde, Nawitrika. People were very happy. But that in itself gives an opportunity for people to understand. And because it's the presidency that moves that traditional ceremony, it has a spotlight, then people get to understand. But the icing on the cake, Andrew, is the camaraderie of other chiefs going for these traditional ceremonies. I could tell you today, one of the ceremonies I attended, probably specific to my constituency, near my constituency, which is Katombola, in Livingstone, we had the record of about 55 chiefs supporting Chief Mukuni. We went to Chitimkuru, Ulubemba. We had about 50 chiefs supporting Minelubemba. That in itself is a class act. When I talk about a class act, it's something that you've never seen before. And if we continue in that trajectory, the 72, 73 dialects that we have in our country today will be able to understand each other. And who knows, you, Mwansa, today will be found yourselves in Western Province, marrying from there. Well, I suppose you're already taken, but I'm sorry about that. But any of those, there will be no difference to that effect. But that is exactly what we're talking about. But I think the clarion call for my ministry, as well as from His Excellency the President, is to allow these traditional leaders to now give us an opportunity, at least a fixed date on when these ceremonies will happen. That in itself will enable my president be able to attend some of these ceremonies. And we will not treat any ceremony as a small ceremony. In fact, I forgot about one, the House of Chiefs, Chief Nkambo, first ever in Lambaland. Ceremony there. His Excellency the President was there. Now, that in itself gives an indication of saying, okay, fine, where do I go to in terms of activities? Oh, so in the month of October, if I visit, let's say, Masaiti, in the month of October, there will be this ceremony. So it's an activity. In this month of March, or is it in February, if I visit Chipata, there's this activity. So that's what we're talking about. So you need to just ensure that we've got the firm dates, and then the team can be able to market. And then the president is able to go, irrespective of what people would probably say small ceremonies. There's no such thing as a small ceremony. We just want to celebrate with them. So if the dates clash in the presidency, we are there as ministers. So we've been tasked, Minister of Tourism, Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, together with the House of Chiefs and as well as State House. We're going to harmonize these dates so that we're able to sell and be able to now put them on firmly on the president's calendar so that he's able to attend. And I'd like to encourage the many Zambians, those of you who are in Lusaka, you need to go to your own traditional ceremonies. You need to understand your roots. This is where we have a big problem. People don't understand where they're coming from. So for you, Mr. Mwansa, find out when your traditional ceremony is. Just go and connect and understand exactly where you're coming from, and you'll be able to now find it as an activity for your children and your children's children.
Earlier on, Minister, we're talking about some of the initiatives that government is especially doing amidst this drought. Obviously, we're living in an era of climate change, and we potentially don't know what would happen. Even as we've been the department, the meteorological department, has already told us that we're going to receive fairly a good rain for pattern in this season. But that still leaves to climate change. I'd like to find out really what initiatives you've put up deliberately to ensure that even amidst this climate change, tourism still doesn't suffer.
Well, I think like you raised this very, very important concern. And I think it all lies with government to ensure that we mitigate some of the challenges that we're faced with climate change. How do we mitigate? And ultimately, what is important is that in as much as we're trying to invite a number of people, and I want to just indicate to you that earlier this year in May, we held the CAF, the Commission for Africa, UN Tourism Commission for Africa meeting in Livingstone. And at that meeting, we launched Invest in Tourism in Zambia, investment guide in tourism in Zambia. That in itself was a call to action to get enough foreign direct investment into the country. Now, as they are coming through in terms of FDI, obviously these people would want to be cutting down trees, opening up areas where they're building lodges and whatnot. But we're deliberate. We're saying you need to be eco-friendly. In terms of being eco-friendly, we don't need to leave a scar in the environment that you're coming to invest in. So we're very cautious about that, and that's the support that we're giving. More so, we were fortunate enough to get a concessional loan from the World Bank, which was obviously effective January this year. That in itself is a green project. When I say green project, because it's called the Green Resilient Transformation Project, the Great TDP. We call it a 100 million concessional loan from the bank, where now we're looking at how best we can do tourism projects which are eco-friendly. And that's how, again, going back to your earlier question with regards to how best do we work with, or how best is the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment supported, now they become a focal point ministry that will now be able to now manage, we navigate around how we can build luxury superstructures out there without leaving a scar in the environment. So there's all those things that we're putting in place. But more so, we're encouraging a lot of these green projects that are out there. They may be alien to us today, but I think we'll be able to embrace them along the way, because people need to understand that you don't have to clear 100 hectares to do anything. If I can only allow you to clear 100 hectares if you're going to plant maize or something of that sort. But if you're going to build a concrete jungle, that in itself for us doesn't work. So we're really trying to see how best we could encourage both local as well as international foreign investors investing in our sector to ensure that they work within the confines of the ecology itself.
I'd like to find out how that is going, Minister, because you as a New Dawn government boast of the fact that just in the mining sector over the past 3 years that you've been in government, you've attracted over $8 billion into the mining sector. I'd like to find out how the figures look like, when it comes to the tourism sector, but also I know you've already begun to talk about what are some of the strategies you're using to attract, the tourism, sector. I'd like to find out in terms of the figures. How do figures look like in terms of investments?
Okay, so the figures within the tourism sector are looking good. I'll probably start off from the aspects of contribution to GDP. Exit 2023, we're probably looking at about 9% contribution to GDP, which obviously is a small figure. In my honest opinion, it's not something that I'll probably be singing about as happy. I'm looking at double digit. And because of the drought now, essentially we've had to cut back on some of our budgets. Why did we cut back? To ensure that we buy more relief food for the many Zambians who may be going through a difficult time. And our plea to the Zambians is that we're not going to have anybody die out of hunger. That would be very irresponsible, and I can safely tell you that based on the mitigation that we've had to cut back on some of the what quote unquote I would like to call luxuries was going towards drought mitigation. Now, in terms of our contribution, fast forward 2024, the plan is to exit the year with close to about 2 million international arrivals, and probably about 50% of that, of the 2 million, which is probably 1 million, to be domestic. Now, again, this is just me loosely throwing numbers out there, but the ultimate goal is to have a $1 billion investment, $1 billion rather, sector within the tourism sector here. Now, here we're talking about two sides. We've got the consumptive and the non-consumptive tourism. The consumptive side of tourism is what you like to do, what everybody else would actually know as hunting. Remember, the hunting side of the business is what we like to call sustainable hunting. The two things that sustainable hunting does is, number one, it gets revenue for both government as well as the communities. That's number one. Number two, it also helps us on managing the carrying capacity of this wildlife. Wildlife grows, just like any other animal. It breeds, it starts to grow. When the numbers become unsustainable, you won't be able to manage. There's conflict. And human, wildlife, we all know who sometimes gets to lose the fight. So we need to start creating a balance. And that's what the consumptive does. The non-consumptive is where now you put photographic camps, the lodges, the guest houses, and the like within the area. So that in itself, cumulative, will create what I would like to call a $1 billion sector. And we're actually looking at getting to that particular one end of 2024. And most likely, if I push it further, we'll probably call it second quarter of 2025.
Honourable Minister, thank you so much for making time to speak with us.
Thank you very much. It's just that we have very little time, but there's a whole lot going on within the Ministry of Tourism, which which we should always be able to just get to understand and chat about and see how best we could push this particular sector of ours forward. At the end of the day, if it's not fun, then you end tourism.
Honourable Minister there, Minister of Tourism, getting to give us the plans that government has when it comes to tourism sector, but also encouraging myself and yourself to still visit Livingstone and Victoria Falls.